Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Geri Puleo, the President and CEO of Change Management Solutions, and I'd like to welcome you to the role of organizational memory during change. So, to get started in this discussion of organizational memory during an organization's change initiative, what exactly is memory? We need to define it. Now, you're probably wondering why I have this image of a Buddhist monk on this particular slide. Well, there's a great story about an old monk and a young monk who were crossing the river. And what they found was a young woman who was afraid to cross the river. Well, both monks had made vows to never touch a woman. However, the old monk looked at the young woman and said, "I'll be happy to help you." And he carried her across the river. She thanked him, and then he went on his way. Well, the young monk was appalled. And finally he said to the older monk, "Why did you touch that woman? Why did you carry her across the river? You have negated your vows. You should not be able to come back to the monastery." And the old monk wisely said to him, "I let go of her hours ago. Why are you still holding on?" Now, if you think about it, isn't that the way many of us are? That something happens in our lives and then we hold on to it and let it affect our moods, our actions, and our behaviors. Many times these memories can make us very angry. Sometimes these memories can make us happy. But when it comes to organizational memory, the memory that employees have of past attempts to change or past attempts to modify what's going on within the organization will affect their own ability to change. So just like the old monk, for change initiatives to take root within the company, employees have to understand what their memories are and then decide to move beyond them. And in this era of constant and unrelenting change, this is a great quote from an article on organizational memory as an enabler and constrainer of innovation in knowledge management. The author said, "How one survives in an era of constant change is by changing themselves. And memory is a fundamental part of enabling or hindering that change." So when we look at organizational memory in a change initiative, a lot of times the memories that employees have of past change initiatives or past events or behaviors or actions or even grievances that they experienced while they were part of that organization will impact whether or not they embrace the changes, and if they embrace the changes, the organization as a whole can change, or if they are going to resist those changes by hindering it. And it's all based upon their memories of what's been going on. So let's delve down a little bit more in terms of what organizational memory is and what it isn't. Well, first off, organizational memory can be defined as the information and knowledge from the past of the organization that is accessible by the employees and the leaders for present and future organizational needs. So let's think about that for a minute. What the organization has done in the past is going to inform and influence what the employees are doing right now, as well as where the organization is going to go in the future. In other words, the past is viewed as the best predictor of the present and future behaviors. We can also look at it another way. Organizational memory is a collective recollection of experiences as well as the meanings that are applied to that experience and the inferences of that meaning. So let's think about that. Organizational memory is not just the memory of one individual employee, but it is the collective memory of what has happened within that organization. But it's not just, well, this is what happened, but it's how it is defined within the organization and what it really means to the organization. For example, if an organization had attempted to acquire another company and had put a lot of time into it, but then the acquisition fell through, well, the meaning associated with that might be we should never acquire other organizations in the future. So those meanings and inferences will affect and impact how the organization is operating today, as well as what it may attempt to do in the future. Now, if those experiences were good, then it will actually encourage the employees and the organization as a whole to embrace innovation and change. But if the meaning of those past experiences was that they were bad, it will hinder the organization's ability to be innovative and change. So organizational memory is not just the memory of one individual employee, but organizational memory is is really the cultural memories of the employees within that organization. In other words, the perception that the organization has is its reality. So, where exactly is organizational memory located within the organization? I mean, if we want to change the memories or uh, view them in a different way, we have to figure out where they can be found. And there's three locations. First is within the individual employees and their relationships. These create the shared interpretations of what had happened within that organization. That's kind of pretty straightforward, correct? When we think of memory, we think of that as a uniquely human function. But organizational memories, because remember, they're collective memories, also exist in repositories. This could be older workers who have seen things in the past and have these memories, and they have certain meanings attached to the memories of those events, as well as what the inferences are. And also repositories such as routines. This is the way we always do it. We may not even remember why we do it this way, but we've always done it this way. Now, another location of organizational memory can be found within the work processes or even the organization's products and services that it sells to its customers. So these are things like the procedures that are done or the standards, be they standards of excellence or maybe they're standards of mediocrity. But if you look at the memory of the organization in terms of procedures and standards and products and services, this is the way that they've done things. When there are organizational memories attached in the products and services or work processes, for a company to radically change requires them to view these, what they do, very, very differently. In other words, how the organization defines itself based on its memories will determine how they will adapt and respond to changes that are occurring within their marketplace. So, for example, if Kodak had only defined itself as a camera company, then they would still be creating the cameras that existed, 10, 15 years ago. But they did eventually have to modify who they are. It was very difficult for them, and they went through a lot of turmoil trying to rebrand and reposition their company. And this is because of the organizational memory that was embedded within its work processes, products, services, repositories, as well as their employees and the relationships therein. Now, the biggest problem with organizational memory is that it's sticky. We remember things, we gave certain meanings to what had happened, and then from those meanings, we can infer what will happen in the future. The problem is during organizational change, you need to modify the way in which you do things, which means you have to re-look at the memories of the organization. If you don't, you're going to be stuck in a rut. So where are these memories the most sticky? Well, it would be in the individual employee's personal perceptions, the with them or the what's in it for me. This is difficult when you have pockets within the organization of employees who are being asked to change, but their memories of things or their attitudes towards them says that this change is not wanted and it's not going to work. So you'll get a lot of change resistance. And when it goes beyond one individual to a group, this is the socialization process that exists within any workforce. When there is a general consensus within the organizational workforce that this is good and this other thing is bad, then that creates a very sticky organizational memory, and it will result in change resistance or an inability or lack of desire to move forward into something new and more innovative. There's also the control mechanisms. Like we talked about the work processes as one of the locations of organizational memories, there are control mechanisms that are used by management. In fact, the ability to control is a major aspect of the management process. Control is found in the rules, the procedures, even the performance reviews in terms of what is recognized and rewarded and what isn't. And then, of course, there's the historic records and the stories. Every organization has stories about who we are, where we've been, how we got through it, and where we're going to go into the future. Remember, all of these different repositories of organizational memories serve to reinforce one another. The stories the organization tells are seen in the control mechanisms, the peer pressure of socialization, as well as the personal perceptions of individual employees. So now that we understand what organizational memory is, those collective recollections of what has happened in the past, as well as what it means and how it affects how we're going to move forward in the future, as well, and we've also discussed the locations of these organizational memories. But here's the problem. Memories are rarely complete or accurate descriptions or interpretations of history. In other words, the memories that the organizational has of what has happened to it in the past, of the challenges that it's overcome, of the opportunities they were able to take advantage of. Usually the memories only focus on certain aspects of it, so they're incomplete and often inaccurate interpretations of that history. And because they are lacking in completeness or accuracy, it can really undermine the organization's ability to move forward in response to unsuspected changes. And here where it all comes together. In today's age of constant and unrelenting change, of new competition from areas that you had never anticipated, organizational memory can actually impede the organization's ability to respond to so-called nonlinear shifts that require change. Now, a nonlinear shift is nothing more than a surprise. It's something that has happened that the organization did not predict based on its memories of how things happened in the past and how they should respond to it. And the resistance within the organization to any type of a change initiative or innovation is based on the assumptions of what it is that we know based on what we've done in the past. So as you can see, organizational memory practices can actually hinder change. It can undermine the ability of the organization to effectively and efficiently and proactively respond to the stuff that happens in running a business. And these can be found in obsolete policies and practices. It's those reports that are constantly done that nobody ever looks at, that aren't utilized in any other type of a format, but we just keep on doing them because, well, we've already done them. And also in the outdated assumptions and mindsets. You see a lot of conflict many times between uh, the older generations within the workplace and the newer workers because they view things differently, and the assumptions and mindsets may in fact be outdated. But one thing to keep in mind is outdated assumptions are not necessarily age related. I have worked with many young people who are new to the workplace who have assumptions about the way things should be done that quite frankly surprised me because they reflected very outmoded paradigms on leadership and management and how to satisfy customers. Also, an organizational memory practice that hinders change is underperforming products and services. It's kind of like the boyfriend or girlfriend that you know you should break up with because it's really not fulfilling or satisfying anymore, but you just keep hanging in there. Many companies are prone to this also. They have products and services, so-called legacy products and services that they've always offered, and to suddenly say, we don't need these anymore and we're no longer going to be producing them, can honestly create pretty emotional reactions from people within that organization. But yet they hang on to it and waste a lot of resources on these underperforming products and services. Maybe if they changed the product or service or tweaked it a little bit, they could still offer them. But many times the underperformers really need to be cut from the company's portfolio. And then finally, one of the biggest organizational memory practices that can hinder change are the biases. Now, people will say, I'm not biased. I look at things very logically. Well, you may think so, but everybody has certain biases, certain assumptions or paradigms on how things work. And you can find in companies, especially in their culture, that show these biases in their strategic planning, what it is we will do and we won't do, the operations, how we are going to do something, and the HR policies in terms of expectations with employees. Now, all of these things, the policies, practices, assumptions, mindsets, underperforming products and services, and biases, all continue to work together and reinforce each other in a way that will actually hinder change in the organization. And if the organization doesn't change, they will not be able to be innovative. So the question becomes, how do you change organizational memory? Some people might say it's a memory, you can't change it. Well, you can't ignore or no longer remember what had happened, but you can change and modify the meaning you associate with those memories and the inferences that are gleaned from them. Have you ever been in a situation that you thought was the absolute worst thing in your life? And then, on retrospect, after some time has passed, you look at that horrible situation and say, you know, I'm really grateful for it. Because of that, I was able to make changes and move in a new direction. So it's the same thing with organizational memory, but we need to do this in a certain way that limits those practices who keep organizational memories in a way that will undermine the employees and the company, and what new types of practices should be added so that the memories can evolve to help the company move forward. So the first thing to limit is linear extrapolation from the past via rigorous data analysis. Okay, now that sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, but basically what it means is it's the assumption of the past equals the future. Big data is huge now. Everybody in their Antilles is trying to get more metrics and more data that can be used to predict the future. Well, especially with financial metrics, those are show what has happened in the past. They may not show what's going on in the future or those trends that are beginning to impact the organization. So the linear extrapolation is saying that, okay, we have been increasing sales by 20% year over year, so we can expect that to happen. Well, not necessarily. And to guard against those assumptions, you need to add non-traditional voices to anticipate those non-linear shifts or surprises that may happen. This is one of the reasons why many companies want some younger employees to participate in strategic planning, because they have insights into that younger market that, quite frankly, some of the assumptions and biases within the organization prevent organizational leaders from accurately seeing. Another thing that you need to limit is an over-reliance on quantifiable, tangible metrics, such as on time, to spec, number of calls received. Many people who have worked, for example, in customer service say that they can't do their job well because they are only permitted, according to their regulations and the way that they are reviewed on their performance appraisals, they can only spend a maximum of 7 minutes with any individual call-in client. And they're upset by that because it's too much of a focus on efficiency, which is very quantitative, as opposed to effectiveness. And effectiveness comes into the equation by emphasizing rapid learning to eliminate defensiveness on the part of employees. So in other words, instead of just focusing on the metrics because these sound good, or these are industry benchmarks, or we calculate that if we hit these certain metrics that we will then get X number of a percentage lift in profit, by adding an emphasis on learning. Learning can be a little bit sticky. Learning can be a little bit difficult, but if you focus on rapid learning so that employees can learn from what's going on and they're a part of making the changes so they can become more effective, this will eliminate defensiveness, or people who are stuck. Remember, we were talking about being stuck in a rut with organizational memory. Eliminate the defensiveness from assumptions and biases. And finally, you need to limit attempts to optimize collaboration through written job descriptions or workflow processes or different design elements within the organization. Again, that tends to micromanage things, and it ignores the very human element. What you need to add to that is to have special teams. And these special teams should not just be with the insiders within a department, but they should include outsiders who are unafraid and encouraged to challenge all the assumptions that are embedded in organizational memory. Now, when I talk about things to limit and things to add, notice that I'm not saying the first column should be things to do away with. I'm saying that they should be limited. We still need to rigorously analyze data. We still need to have quantifiable metrics. And we still need to make sure that our processes and organizational design will, in fact, help employees do their jobs. But we need to add these other things, the non-traditional outside voices who will challenge those assumptions. And of course, it's absolutely critical that when you challenge those assumptions, the people who are challenging should not be reprimanded for challenging those assumptions. Because the only way that a company can outgrow its organizational memory and move forward and become more innovative and flexible and adaptable and change ready is to challenge the underlying paradigms and assumptions. So what does this all come down to? The realization that the most important single source of competitive advantage is the ability to continually rethink. And rethinking naturally takes a look at what has happened in the past, reframes it in a way that will make you more open to moving forward in your present operations, as well as in the unique future that you see for the company. Organizational memory exists within the minds of employees, and in that, within the collective mind of the organization. Good luck!